Welcome, everyone. We are going to be talking about opening doors to work, lessons from the field, and we have Taryn Trepkowski from Hinsdale Township District 86. Tara Holbrook she is a PECT training educator from Roxana High School. We have Joe Pintinger he is a transition specialist and the PECT program coordinator, and he's from rural Champaign County Special Education Cooperative. And then we have Dawn Scheppelman. She is a program instructor at Halo Heartland Community College. So what we're going to do is we have questions for the panel. We're going to give each of them time to answer each question. We're going to hold our questions from the audience till the end, so we make sure that they all have time to share their programs. But we will have microphones in the center of the room. If you have questions, you can go to either of those microphones to ask questions when that time comes. Okay, so thank you very much. The first question will be for Taryn. Please share a specific example of an innovative strategy you've implemented to improve work experiences for students with disabilities. What made it successful, and what measurable outcomes do you see for students and employers?
Good morning. So for us in our district, we long time now have had community-based internships and opportunities within our high schools for job training. We were always struggling with in terms of like getting measurable data for it. Like, how do you know when students are ready to move from training parts to job sites? And how are we then also working with our paraeducators who are working as job coaches in terms to make sure that we're identifying skill deficiencies and addressing those skill deficiencies and making growth to work towards that competitive employment? So our amazing vocational coordinator, who's actually in the room, sorry, don't mean to call you out, Ashley. She worked really hard to develop a way for us to really track data in terms of looking at like those vocational soft skills, right? So we toyed around with a lot of ideas. Like, first, do we look at like just different task analysis of the job sites they're at? But then when we really thought down and thought about it, if you sat down to do a task analysis, all of a sudden you can be taking data on like 200 steps. But more importantly, we thought about like long-term wise, we wanted to look at like those vocational soft skills that we know could apply to any job. So she has worked really hard to develop a data tracking form that all of our paraeducators use so that students, when they go out to their training sites, once a week they're taking the data on those specific sites, on those specific skills that we can track over time. So that when it comes to IEP goal time, she could go in, like we have a Google Sheets master at our district, which we were very fortunate for, and literally take the data that's been put in there over time, track it by selecting like even just the drop downs of those different vocational skills, and it like shows like data in terms of like graphs and charts. And so when we're looking at getting measurable outcomes in terms of what we're doing, we can track it by job site location, by the actual skill set they're using, and then use it to develop the goals that they're doing. So she trialed it last year, made tweaks, implemented this year after doing some training with our staff. And we're always looking for ways to say, like, how can we make it meaningful? How can we find out the actual progress they're doing? And what's been helpful in terms of it making outcomes for them is that it gives us more systematic data instead of just that anecdotal. Like, oh, they did great today. Or, oh, they were really struggling. They were doing this. So, it takes away from that observational data or, like, that just anecdotal stuff and gives more specifics on the actual skills we know our students need to succeed in the job site.
Thank you.
I'm from Roxana, and we are a school of around 500, and we have a school-based enterprise like most of you do, a cafe. I do have a culinary arts background, so we run it like a restaurant. When we start the school year, they come in, they get their ServSafe certifications, their allergen certifications. Allergens are juniors, seniors. And then we start the school year, we do the first 3 weeks, like we don't open until after Labor Day. So the first 3 weeks are getting recipes, and then they get to do some math. They get to tweak it because you'll find a recipe for 4 to 6 people, and we've got to make it between 48 and 60 servings. So we do recipe conversion, we do recipe costing, we do adaptations to the recipes, and then we open the kitchen for production. So we have to go in and clean and sanitize everything, just like you run a regular restaurant. Every day, they do their own counting down of drawers. They have to drop money after the lunch shifts. We have a business math at the end of the day. So they keep accounting records for their daily earnings, weekly earnings, monthly earnings. They keep track of their expense records. They keep track of inventory. We have task analysis for the jobs. They have a daily self-evaluation that they do with work, which includes a soft skill each month. And then just because we're rushing. No. And then in the summer, we've been able to pilot some programs. So in the summer, in June, we work with a small group of IDD students, and maybe they have to get food handler certification, and we do that training. Last summer, we started an entrepreneurship program, so we piloted Shellpreneurs, which then took off this year. So they started a business. They went through an entrepreneurship class during the day, and then they had time to create their product, and they sold it at a farmer's market. It included creating a businessman plan, so they get those reading, writing, and math skills that they're building with essential tasks. And then they had to go out and do their purchasing. Then they had to go and sell their stuff. We did sell out of everything, so the students were super proud of their success, but then they had to go back and subtract what they earned and their expenses and see, did they make money yet? When would they make money? Because they had to make some initial bigger purchases, like we needed a food dehydrator because someone was making their own teas. They had to buy a specific cutter and binder because someone was doing journaling books, taking old cookbooks and children's books and cutting them up and then adding pages to journaling. And then this summer, our big plan is we're going to be at job sites different days of the week in the community to get a variety of skills, and we'll be taking public transportation to and from every day. So that's going to get a lot more repetitive exposure than just doing a daily or quarterly transit training.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe, and I help to coordinate a work-study program at 10 area high schools across Champaign and Ford counties. And so we're going to zoom out a little bit, really, connecting to some of these strategies we've just heard about. But, my role is maybe a little bit different. Again, I'm at 10 area high schools helping to coordinate a PCT grant, but also, have vote coordinators at each of those schools that are working really hard with our students and maybe have a little bit more contact with those students. But when I was reflecting on innovative strategies, I thought of things like, our quarterly evaluation process. And so, we're really proud of the fact that, quarterly we're sending out letters to all of our employers on fancy letterhead, describing our evaluation process and asking for their feedback. I think it empowers us. I think it, makes the employers think that they're a part of something really special and unique and well organized, and it's a chance for us to advocate for growth, and so that's the goal, right? And so, this is, a intentional move of ours, to get into our businesses in a more formal setting and talk to our employers, with our students there, reviewing their progress, but also, working our way towards paid employment. I think of our media and marketing efforts, and so I'm a part of a TPC here in the area as well, and so we have done radio, we have done, we've been invited to do television. We haven't done television yet. We have a lot of online and visual media that we have done to promote our events, and that stuff's important. Primarily, though, I thought of our multi-tiered work sites, and so. Really proud of some of these work sites that we've worked hard to establish. I call them anchor work sites, so we have 115 or so students in our program across 10 area high schools, and, they're working at 70 different places, but we have a few anchor work sites that are, really good to us. And so they tend to be nonprofits, they tend to be local, UIUC, Respect, and these nonprofits and universities, they tend to be, a bit more enlightened. They want to work with our students. They see, our mission. They have similar missions and goals. and they're larger organizations with a little room to move, and so, we call these multi-tiered work sites because, we have students training, we have students volunteering, we have students who are, who have, we see who have been hired in the past, where they're working for pay, beyond our program. They're developing unique skills in these environments. They're maybe doing tech things, they're maybe doing janitorial things, they're maybe doing clerical things. And so these multi-tiered work sites we're really proud of as an innovative strategy.
Good morning. I'm currently an instructor with the HALO program at Heartland Community College. Prior to that, I was a vocational coordinator at Unit 5. And so that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. I joined another colleague that was working on, wanting to expand the work program. And this is when we were at Normal West High School. And so through years and years of development, but we created what's called the VTAP work program, which is the Vocational Transition Assistance Program. One of our main goals with that was to be able to get our students into as many different places in the community as possible. We were very fortunate that our school district helped us with the transportation piece of that, which can be a big challenge. So that requires a lot of coordination with transportation. That's a beast in itself, as I'm sure some of you have experienced yourself. One of the other things that we really wanted to focus on was being able to get evaluations and getting feedback directly from the employers. So we developed and then, of course, tweaked a quarterly evaluation. Anytime that we were working directly with a business, we had them complete that. One of the things, we always gave that ahead of time, so the employers knew the specific skills that we were working on with students. We would also give additional information about each specific student so that they and the staff they were working with would understand and could help those students develop those. Each of the students was able to get some real hands-on experience. I know at one point we had over 100 different businesses throughout the Bloomington Normal area that we were working with. Again, that took years of development and establishing those relationships. But we were able to create a variety of different schedules for students. I would have students that may be going to one business Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and a different business on Tuesday and Thursday. Being able to talk to those students, find out what they were interested in, and then going out in the community and trying to then develop a site to match their interest. Any site they were at, we specifically had a focus on those soft skills, the communication piece. We also stressed that acceptance of constructive criticism with students, which was big. And I would say one of my favorite things now is when I am out in the community in Bloomington Normal and I will hear someone, "Hey, Ms. Sheppelman," and it is a student that went through the VTAP work program and they are still currently employed there. One of my amazing young men last month was the Employee of the Month at Hy-Vee, so it was a very proud moment.
Okay, on question 2, we're going to start with Tara. What persistent barriers impact your ability to secure and sustain work experience placements, and how have you creatively resolved them to improve outcomes?
So probably one of the biggest barriers is just myself, self-doubt, a little bit of nerves going into new training facilities, trying to set those up as initial partnerships, just being able to have a good elevator pitch and do that. So I am very, very fortunate. I work with a group I like to call the Mavericks. They are amazing. They're very supportive, and we brainstorm and we take on things together. So that's really kind of catapulted us a lot these past few months and years. The second one is kind of like a little bit of student reluctance for job sites. They too are scared. They're like, sometimes it's out of their comfort zone. And they have a little bit of lack of exposure to things. You know, you ask, what do you want to do? What are you interested? You do some surveys and you're like, it says this. And they're like, still deer in headlights. So being able as a team to help prepare them, overcome some of those things, work with them, maybe get a peer mentor to sit in on an interview. We've done that for things. Time constraints. I know probably most of you in this room work. So just being able to allow that time to go out and make those connections, keep those going and thriving. So we also this year reached out to the Rotary Club that our counselor did, and we went there, and just through one visit at Rotary Club, we put response cards out, and we've now connected. I got to drive a skid steer last week and an excavator at the local operator engineer training facility. We sat in a classroom originally, and then they took us out to their training, and they're like, go find your machine and get in it. And I was like, we're letting all of them drive. We're doing this right now. Like, I don't even know if some of them have a driver's ed. Like, have they been in a car? But it went really well. They were thrilled. But just being able to get that initial hands-on thing in a supported environment really does make a difference. It also created us a work site for our summer at Operation Blessing, which is a local community completely free food bank and clothing opportunities. So we'll have some excellent opportunities there.
Thank you, Tara. Reflecting on persistent barriers, I came up with a few different things that I think we're all probably familiar with. And we'll just jump right in, rural resources, right, guys? So, I work for a rural co-op, we're serving 10 rural schools. And so as we've discussed many times over, the past couple of days, rural resources are at a minimum sometimes, employers, service providers, transportation, and so forth. Transportation. The ICTW just did a really cool, study and released some cool information about transportation in our area. And so check that out. But, there's no public transit for many of our students. There's less access to ADA and rideshare apps. There's less staff to drive school buses. And there's no Vail bikes in many of our rural communities, and so transportation is an issue as well. Staffing, right? So we talked about staffing. School staffing is in crisis. Aides are at a minimum. Staffing at our employers is stretched thin. This tends to equal less available work sites. But finally, really the big one that unfortunately, I think we probably all experience is discrimination. Discrimination persists in our communities. Inclusive philosophies, in my opinion, are slow to disseminate to rural communities. I run across a lot of dated thinking in my position, and so it's even hard for me to say that because I have so much faith in the people I work with and the schools that I work with, but that's real. And so even some of our families sometimes don't have the same expectations I do for their young people. I think we're supposed to discuss solutions as well.
We are.
Yeah, and so. Back to that ICTW webinar on transportation solutions, check it out, right? Partner and persist, right? Persistence, consistency, right, is, I think can solve a lot of our problems. Get creative, try stuff, right? I don't have as eloquent, a phrase or quote as James Baldwin, who we heard, somebody presented and talked about James Baldwin yesterday, right? But I talk about baseball a lot, right? And so I say, to hit home runs, you have to swing at pitches. Period.
So I would have to echo a couple of those as well. When someone asks about barriers, the first one that comes to mind for me is transportation. Once students are finished with the school and they're moving into adulthood and hopefully have gainful employment, and they do not have a driver's license. So I do have students that live within the Bloomington-Normal area that some of them are able to take the public transportation. That, of course, means convincing the families, not necessarily the student, but the families of them that they are capable of doing that. Also finding a job that will work within the schedule, the bus route, the times, and then also wanting to find a spot where they don't have to switch buses a lot. So some of those definitely pose a challenge. We do have Connect Mobility. Unfortunately, it does not go into the rural communities around. So we've had to try and come up with being creative to get those individuals who have a job. How are we going to get them there? One of the things I have done is once I have an established relationship with a business, and those VTEP students have been working within that business, so the employees know them, going to the manager, the supervisor, and saying, do you feel comfortable talking to your staff about a carpooling type situation? So I have more than one student that there's an employee, that they work with at the job site that now picks them up each morning and takes them to work. The family does provide compensation to them, but that was one way in which we were able to kind of go over that, or to get around that. Another thing that I had started working on, and it didn't quite pan out, but I think there's still some potential there, is there was a gentleman in town that owned his own limousine service. And so he already had the credentials and the insurance as far as being able to transport people. And I had started some talks with him about, well, what if you had kind of a daily route where you were picking up the same individuals and you were taking them to job sites? And he was very intrigued by that. I ended up retiring last May, and so I never was able to kind of bring that into its final steps. But I think there is some potential there if someone wanted to look into those things. And I would say my other barrier is just convincing families that their student can get on Connect Mobility. They don't have to have you with them. They can be dropped off at the job site, and they're just fine to go in and complete their tasks. I would find it was easy to convince my students. I could see them gaining that self-confidence each and every day, but sometimes gaining the family's trust could be a little more challenging. That the way that I overcame that was just lots and lots of conversations, even inviting family members, hey, let's stand back and you witness, you watch so that you can see what I see.
So Hinsdale, although it's in a large suburban suburb of Chicago, so you would think, oh, the wealth of access to everything, right? So yes, we do have a wealth of access to a lot of things, but maybe similar to like rural areas, for some reason, our area is a transportation dead zone. Like if you look at the maps, it literally like horseshoes around us, and there is one bus line, one RTA PACE bus line that runs down one major street. So if our students are fortunate enough to live near that line, we're good, right? We could do the transportation training. RTA, paratransit, all of the Uber programs that have come out, they're great, but your qualifications always end up being that you have to be within 3/4 of a mile of an established bus route. Again, great if you're by that one road. Well, what happened 20 years ago when I started in this district was when they started demolishing large Section 8 housing complexes in the city of Chicago to build multi-million-dollar townhouses and duplexes and condos. And so their idea was to redistribute these families to the suburbs where, maybe there was differences in educations and opportunity. So in our area, they built this massive complex about maybe 2 miles down from one of the major highways in the middle of nowhere. Like in terms of everything that's populated around our area, you go down to where we took these people from the city who were used to having access to, CTA and buses and L train stations. And we put them in an area where there was no bus lines, and their opportunities were a Walgreens, a small little mini mart, and a gas station. And I think there's one restaurant over there. If it's still there, it keeps changing what it is, though. So it's really great when you're trying to help our students get jobs and they have no access to any transportation to get it, and the families don't have transportation either, or a lot of these families are working 2 and multiple jobs. And so even if they did have a car, they are not available to drop them off and pick them up from work. And then, like I said, regardless of that population, there's one bus line. So oftentimes we have students that are ready to work. We're able to assist getting them jobs, but then that part of being able to get to and from job on their own is like nearly impossible. So we've had to do a lot of creative thinking around that. We also have a large metro system. So sometimes it might be that we
we have a student and we work to train them to take that metro 1 or 2 stops to get near where that bus line comes. So yes, they're taking a train and then a bus to get somewhere. In terms of the Uber program, we've had to be very creative in terms of them riding a bike, walking to a spot that puts them within the 3 quarters, and then like coordinating with that location. We just worked with a student who has a competitive job at IKEA and qualified for that Uber program, but then we had to work with getting her like accustomed to going to a specific site. It was we talked to the place she was going to. She'd get dropped there, and then she'd like arrange her Uber to pick her up and drop her off from there because that put her within the distance. Sometimes our students have had to pay out of pocket for that short distance in Uber in order to get on Uber to go the longer way. So it's just been really creative looking at like how can we still make the system work for us, and then also like how can we advocate. We've had district officials and area people get involved with talking to RTA a lot about what can we do to improve this system. Even for that population of that housing subdivision, they've been able to work to get it for all the residents in that area, a supported Uber program through RTA that they're able to access in order to get out from their community to where they need to go. And then we've had transportation problems if you think about it in terms of even just our training sites. So if years ago, if you were, you had staff members that drove like the athletic Suburbans and the mini buses to get people to and from their training sites throughout their day. And then the law changed and you had to have a CDL and do the whole bus training thing to be able to access that. Well, it's really hard to get your staff to want to do CDL bus training, and it can be expensive. So it really cut down. So now we had all these Suburbans and all these mini buses that we could no longer access. So we worked really hard with our administration to get through for our transition programming shuttle buses. So we have dedicated buses during our day that shuttle students for everything they're out there doing in the community. So whether it's a work site, they're accessing something else in their community, we have buses coming and going from our transition centers all day long. It's a large coordinated effort, but it at least allowed us to still give them those opportunities to get out there and experience the training sites while they work towards competitive employment.
All right, thank you. On question number 3, we'll start with you, Joe. In your experience, what does a strong school-business partnership look like in practice? How do you ensure it is mutually beneficial, sustain employer engagement over time, and successfully move employers toward paying students for their work?
Thank you, Paula. And so successful school-to-business partnerships, guys, I want to blow your minds here, right? I think it's about kindness. I think it's about consistency. And I think it's about strong communication. I think it's about collaboration with DRS, with employers, with our schools, true collaboration, empathetic collaboration, over communication, shared decision making. I think it's about family support. We want to capitalize on strong family supports. Oftentimes when things are going well, what do you know? There's a strong family behind that student. We need to create strong family supports, right? And so, assume that our families are going to be challenged in making these next steps for their young people, right? Meet them halfway, offer help before they ask for it, but mostly, I wanted to highlight enthusiasm, right? And so I think framing is everything. When I meet with employers, I predict success. I smile a lot, right? I send cards, I bring treats. I talk about, I say to my students all the time, like, finding a job is great, finding a home is better. And so, when our students find both of those, or when we find both of those, we're there. Make it a home. Pay it forward, right? Do for your employers because you're going to want them to do for you, and so I've been asked by employers to participate in some of their marketing things. Can I do an interview for them and put it on their website? Of course I can. I can do that all day. Thank you.
So I would have to agree that communication is absolutely key. As I'm trying to establish a new relationship with a business, I may start by contacting through email or trying to get a hold of someone through the phone. Oftentimes, I don't get a reply to that. So I just show up at their door, and I have done that many times. Even if what I can do is set an appointment. If I'm standing there, I can get an appointment set with the person that I need to talk to. So that's very beneficial. So that persistence, I would agree, 100% is required. When I do go and meet with a new potential employer, I want to have some written information along with like the spiel that I'm going to give them. So I have a sheet that outlines what the program is and the benefits to both the student and to their business, what we would provide if we partnered with them. And also making sure that they have all contact information for me. So I was very lucky. Our school district actually provided all of the vocational coordinators with a cell phone after years and years and years of begging for this. So they were then able to reach us immediately. They could get a quick phone call if they needed anything, a text message, emails. And so that was extremely beneficial. The other thing that I wanted to do to kind of then help solidify that relationship is I really had to make sure that I was listening specifically to each and every employer. If there was a specific uniform that was required, then I wanted to make sure on day one my student was going in and had all the necessary things. For example, non-slip shoes or a specific color pants, those kind of things. Also that arrival time, making sure that they knew the bus number and the time the student would both be dropped off and picked up, so that they would know the time they were going to be there. I also wanted to talk to them about that specific task completion. What is it that our students can do for you? What area do you need assistance with? Once I would go there with students, then whenever I walk in a business, I'm always looking, and it just kind of like that vocational brain takes over where, oh, my student could do that, they could do that, they could do that. So providing some of those examples to employers and then creating a schedule. As you know, all students may need something a little bit different. Making sure that they, again, have that evaluation, knowing here's the goals, here's what I'm wanting to help my student with, so that they could take a look at that. One of the other things that I think was extremely important was holding my students accountable. My student is going into their business. Oftentimes there are customers, and if a learning opportunity comes up, making sure that I am supporting that employer and making sure that my student is the one that knows what the expectations are.
I think for us, one of the biggest things was having a dedicated person, like one go-to person. Over the years, we've had different things, right? It was very general. Back when I first started, I did transition, like coordinator plus vocational coordinator. So you're pulled in like 9 million different directions. We've had it changed out to where it's like teachers, like, right? If the student was coming from your program, you were the contact person that went to the job sites, arranged and communicated. Well, that can get really hard for a community partner to know who I'm contacting to about what student, how do I reach them? So by having one dedicated vocational coordinator, it made it more systematic, right? There was one person you go to for your information. There's one person coming to you asking for opportunities and discussing and problem solving with you. And so it's kind of like made it a stronger partnership instead of like making it more of this overwhelming thing. We've also worked really hard in terms of like making it beneficial. So it can be hard to take a student with a disability into a work site. It's hard as the supervisor, the business owner, and then hard as the like natural support coworker, peer that might be in there. So our vocational coordinator has not only just developed like a brochure she uses when she goes in and like tries to pitch and her elevator speech when she pitches to a new site, but also developed like one-page informational sheets that can be shared with the employer plus their staff in terms of the best practices for working with somebody with a disability. Here's things you might see. Here's ways you can support them. So it kind of just demystifies that disability a little bit and gives them some strategies, because this might be some of their first experience working with a student with any type of significant need. Our vocational coordinator is also very intentional in how she places students.
So we all know if we're not interested in something, our ability to want to do it, or our success at it is very limited. So she uses like interest surveys for students at the beginning of the year that kind of outline like the different job tasks that might be available at our training sites, and then she tries to match those, right? So we don't want to put students that are already not going to be happy somewhere just to have them at a placement. We try to align it so that it is beneficial for both people and we see that growth. And then lastly, one of the things we're very fortunate to do that really I think helps solidify like and acknowledge what our community partners do for us is at the end of every year, in May, we host a community partnership breakfast. So it's quite a formal, nice event. It's in a nice room similar to something like this. It's a seated breakfast. There's presentations. So we have students that talk about what their work experiences have been and what they get from it. We typically have like an employer that talks about what they gain from providing that opportunity for the student. There's slideshows and videos going the whole time that's showing students at their sites and what they're doing. I mean, I've been at this a long time and every year it makes me tear up. There's acknowledgement. Every year they get a gift that has like a logo we've made that says like they're a proud vocational partner of, Hinsdale District 86. So we've done cups and lunch boxes and bags and all kinds of things, so that when they're out and about and they have it, you see the little logo, right? You know that they're a partnership. And we just advertise it, right? Anytime we're giving presentations to anywhere, we highlight the businesses that are helping us. We make sure they're highlighted in things that go out from our school districts. So within the community, they know these are the partnerships that we have and the businesses that are trying to support our young adults with disabilities. And so it's just a great way to recognize and honor what they're doing, listening to their concerns by having that dedicated person, and then just coming together yearly to celebrate the successes that are happening while we're together.
So building the school business partnership, one of the things that we do is make sure the students know they're an integral part of that partnership. Like I said, we do the daily self-check things. Probably the first 4 of those items all relate to soft skills and just being ready for work, to be present, so they know that they are the face of us when they go to these work sites, that they have to show up clean. They have to be on time. They have to be prepared to work. And those things. So that's one of the things we work on. We make mistakes. That's how the students learn. So one of the big questions we ask over and over is, what did you learn? So whether it's things that we learn that are positive and things that we're growing, or how to overcome mistakes. So I think that constant check-in kind of builds them for when they start to go out in the community. And then a lot of it is just echoing what everyone else here has already said. We start with that initial meeting. We do the treats and the thank yous and keeping those check-ins going. I do have on my list that we want to start the end of the year social, so I'll ask you more about that. And I was really excited yesterday when I left Redbud's presentation that they send their students in uniforms with just khakis and a school polo. That takes a lot out of, I have to be nervous about them not wearing pajamas to work, right? So, and maybe that's only our problem, but so a lot of it has already been said, but.
Okay. Question 4.
Okay, great.
Yes. We'll start with Dawn.
Yeah.
Yes. What is the most important takeaway or recommendation that you can give for building and refining innovative pre-ETS and work experiences for students with disabilities?
I would have to say that realizing that working as a team is going to be the best way, because you are going to be incorporating both classroom instruction along with the work-based learning and the post-secondary counseling, talking about the soft skills, and then wanting to have students develop their self-advocacy and their self-confidence. So if you can establish a good working team to help you, that is absolutely key. It's been so beneficial. Offering that classroom instruction is fantastic, but it is never going to be able to replace the hands-on experience that a student can get when they're going in the community. So we would have students that would go into the community with the entire classroom as far as classroom instruction, but being able to go into a business as a potential employee and completing those tasks and feeling like you're part of that team You can't replicate that within a classroom. And so trying to get students into as many different places as possible is definitely extremely important. One of the things I also do with students is I will meet with them individually and have them help develop their goal areas. So the goals that they are working on also coordinate with what is in their IEP. So they are very familiar with, well, here's an area that I do well in, here's an area that I need to improve upon. And so when they are helping to establish that goal, I've seen a lot more success in that, because knowing when they go into the workplace that we're going to be having conversations about things that happen up as they're developing or improving upon that goal, they're already familiar with that. They know what we're looking for. I have found it just makes it a little easier for them to accept some of that constructive criticism when they have some ownership in what it is that they're working on. Getting feedback from a teacher, getting feedback from a vocational coordinator, of course, that is invaluable information for students, but it doesn't compare to when the person from the business, the employer, when they're providing it, definitely can have a bigger impact on things. So once you've established that relationship with an employer, being able to set up a time that they would sit down with the student, you going with them quite possibly, and getting feedback from them seems to make a very big impact on skills, soft skills, work completion, things that they may need to change.
Similar to what Dawn said, I think it's teamwork, right? When you're at the transition age level, everything we do is pre-ETS and work experiences, right? It's our whole curriculum. It's really easy to figure out how we're providing it and documenting it. But then you're looking at, we're opening, potentially eligible cases for students while they're still in high school. So which our job then is providing those pre-ETS services. But how do we do that when the focus is on those graduation credits and those academic classes and getting to college? And so how am I saying, what am I providing in addition to say that I'm meeting their pre-ETS? So we, in our district, have worked really hard with like SPED leadership teams and everything to develop like specific curriculums, right? So we said, okay, resource classes are great. And most of our students are in some type of resource class. So how can we implement something more than just, let me use this time to refine learning on my homework, let me get this done, or I have this paper done, or those types of things. So we use a very specific curriculum. It's called ORI, and it's been implemented now within our resource classes across both high school buildings. In terms of weekly, there are pre-ETS transition-based lessons the students are participating in completing as part of their resource class that they are getting credit for. We've also worked to develop partnerships within the high school buildings. First, CTE, right? Those CTE courses can be extremely beneficial in terms of providing our students with work-based learning opportunities in some of those pre-ET environments. And then even in our business department, there was a class called Business Work Experience. So we've been able to partner with that teacher because part of that is they get early dismissal because the business work experience teacher is literally helping them find a job. So some of our higher level students that are work ready, we're partnering, we're enrolling in that class, we're working with that business teacher to get them placed out into a competitive job that he's monitoring and providing information for. So it just expands that base because we're teaming together. We have worked in terms of like related services. So speech and language is pulling a student. OT is working on something. So what can you do? So a student has a job interview. Well, I'll reach out to the speech and language pathologist, and she'll pull and do some mock interviewing and practicing on their elevator speech and how they're going to practice those skills. We've had OTs go out to job sites to put in modifications and changes. So it's just really like working as a team to say, how can we provide these things and document these things? We've been very fortunate that I have a stipend position at both high school for someone who can help me document those pre-ETs, right? It's impossible for me to be across 4 buildings at all times. So they're in the buildings, they get a small overage stipend, and they can really quickly document what was the lessons that were done this month in resource as part of that curriculum. Oh, I know in this class that the speech language pathologist worked on interview skills with their student during their sessions. And so it's just a nice systematic way to partner everybody together. We have facilitator positions, which are transition-based like knowledge people in our district that have monthly days that they're at the high school. So students can come see them during that time if they want to problem solve or talk about things or how they can access things, as well as staff can access them, because the more you know, the better, right? So if we start that earlier and we're accessing it and we're providing those supports, it becomes a better facilitated team approach to how we're providing them.
One thing that we do is we start the year off, probably like most of you, with interest and skills inventories, and then we really narrow down the students' main interest. So this year we've been able to partner and either have guest speakers come in, or we've gone to things, and that's almost constant. Nearly, probably if we averaged it out, every other or every third week. We've had students go to their radio station. We've had students go on specific tours on campus rather than just doing a school-wide tour, to go to those radio broadcasting visits. We took a cruise on the riverboat because we had a student who wanted to be a deckhand. So sometimes we do things full group. That became a full group thing. Cruising down the river's great if you have access to that. They got to learn, and these are people who kind of work their way up in job and do some online training. It's not a formal college program that anyone on the boat we were on went through. And then I shared we did the operator engineers. We visited Challenges Career Center. I know they've been here this weekend or these past couple of days. College visits, we took one student who went on a football visit this year. So just that constant. People we've had in. We've, of course, had DRS in. We've had an Army recruiter because the ASVAB, they're like, that's not for me. I'm not going to the military. But the ASVAB has one of the highest ranking career exploration programs. And if you're in high school and take the ASVAB, then it links you to that. And they have access to that for the remainder of their high school. So transit training through a CIL, just keeping those partnerships and building and refining those pre-ETS things, and student focus. If they want to do it, we figure out a way to get it done.
Thank you. And so then, just to remind you guys again, in my role, right, we're zooming out a little bit, and so I'm a bit more of a consultant, a liaison, a coach, and an ally to our teachers in the schools who are, working, in much closer contact with our students. And so, my suggestions and takeaways are a bit more conceptual. But again, I'm big on visibility. I'm always at our job sites. I attend as many IEPs as I can. I drop in on students and employers unexpectedly, but I bring treats. In terms of this visibility piece, I think of this famous quote about, being the change that you want to see and woo-woo-woo. Be the energy and enthusiasm that you hope to see in your students and staff, I think is a good goal. Personal relationships. I think we've all said it today, but I really think that's maybe the number one, at least for me. That's what I'm good at, and that's how I get things done. I think some people use other strategies because those are their skills, right? But for me, my skills are based in personal relationships, and I think I've really, made a lot of great connections that have led to some really awesome outcomes. Take your DRS counselor out to lunch. It makes a difference. And if it's not lunch, right, hang out a little bit, I'm excited that you guys all laughed at that, but I'm not joking. Try stuff, swing at some pitches. I was so excited to hear about Ori over here. So we're trying Ori currently in some of our districts. And, some people are into it, some people are not, but we're trying something. We have job clubs that we, host. We have student panels that we, design. We have retreats and conferences that we try to organize to inspire our students. But in conclusion, maybe my most important takeaway comes from my friend and a current ICTW training specialist, Mr. Jim Mayer, sitting right over there. And he's told me this when I was new in this position just a couple years ago. I was really, sort of anxious about, doing well and, knowing everything on day one. And he says to me, hold on to your hats. It ain't rocket science. And you wouldn't believe the peace that gave me, and so, and this is coming from a guy who's pretty scientific about his work. So, took it with a grain of salt. But I think that's true, I think it's about, again, like being visible, being persistent, being empathetic, treating people like you want to be treated, right? Yeah, and you'll be successful. Thank you.
We're going to open it up to questions now. So if anyone has questions, please go to the microphones. If you have a question for a specific panelist, you can let them know that as well. If it doesn't matter who answers, we can open it up to the entire panel. Any takers? No?
Mike.
Yes.
So, for Tara, can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. With the restaurant cafe, your summer activities, is that ESY or is it like volunteer based? How did you staff that? How did you set that up?
So we constantly redefine that. We're redefining that right now. So it traditionally has fallen under ESY, and then we just look at what we've done programming wise. So if we're doing the food handler certifications, it's all just authentic reading and that kind of stuff. And the math part of that day includes a time where we do go in the kitchen and make lunch. And we take care of things out in the garden, which has to go in a spreadsheet because our Bio 2 students have a garden on campus. So we hit those reading, math, and writing skills. When they wrote the business plan, they were hitting the reading, math, and writing skills. Now this summer, we're going into the community for work-based learning and transit training. So we've kind of stepped away from that very definitive ESY that we can do goals and objectives on to now we're more work-based. And so it'll be like a pre-ETS work component. So I think it falls under a different budget. That's not my wheelhouse, but that's the conversation at the table. Okay. If that kind of is what you were asking.
Sure. And then Dawn, with the community college, do you feel like this program, did it grow in collaboration with like your Department of Student Disability Assistance, or kind of how did that go?
Yeah, so the VTEP work program I was talking about before was prior to me working at Heartland. This is when I was at Unit 5, so public school system. Was that what your question?
But kind of like, how did you get it established then at the community college? Did you already walk into it being there? Or
the HALO program?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. So once I retired from Unit 5, which is where I had helped develop the work program, then that's what I'm doing now, is actually teaching in the HALO program. And that is an established program.
Okay.
That is at HALO. There it is at Heartland.
So Dawn, could you share a little bit about when we first opened Eugene Field and those conversations we had with HALO on what are things that we could do to help students be prepared? Because that collaboration's been going on for a while.
Absolutely. So once we were in the high school studying, we really saw a need for our students that once they had completed that first 4 years, that just staying within the high school classroom and being around the younger age students was just not benefiting them. So Jane and I and one other vocational coordinator from Normal Community was able to start Eugene Field, and they gave us a little corner in the gym to get started. And after years of development, then we now have the entire building. But what we did is we spoke to a lot of the staff at Heartland through the HALO program. What are some of the things that you guys are doing? What are some of the things that you are looking for? Because many of our students, would attend Eugene Field 3 days a week and then 2 days at Heartland, or knowing that our students were going to complete Eugene Field and then going to Heartland in the Halo program. So we did spend quite a bit of time collaborating with them to help prepare our students for that next step.
I have two questions. I don't remember who spoke about the ORI program. But would you be willing to give us more, like a further description, maybe the acronym? And then also somebody mentioned the CIL helping with transportation training. Can you expound on that a little bit? Whoever mentioned that, how that worked, what they provided, how you got it set up. Thanks.
So I don't know if I know, Joe, do you know what ORI stands for?
What I don't, I didn't know if it was.
So, yeah, I don't think it's an acronym. I think it's literally just the name of it. It is all like it's a computer-based. It is a little pricey. But it does specifically address it's just filled with different lessons that students participate in that are all like pre-ETS transition-based skills, self-advocacy, job searching, college accessing. And then it tracks for each student. So it's very, teachers can go in and assign specific lessons, and then it tracks their progress and their information, and then it'll even give you, information then that can be used to develop goals. So I've seen a lot over the years that we've used, and I would say this one, probably why it's a little bit more pricey, is pretty comprehensive, and we have finished 2 years now of implementing it within our high school buildings, and by far it's been the largest success they've had. So I mean, there's endless lessons in there. There really is a wealth of different things, and I would say it reaches a larger population of student ability levels as well. So some of them I think that we've tried in the past, very quickly weren't able to be adapted very well for some of our students.
For our CIL, they come out to campus. We just call them up. They come every year. They do a transit training. It starts in classroom, so the students get out their phones. Best day ever, right? And they learn how to find bus routes and know where to go and the timing and the ins and outs of how the app works, how to get on the bus, how to stay safe on the bus. If somebody says, where do you live? Don't say 3 houses down that, we go through those kinds of training opportunities. Then we do transit training. We're lucky. The bus stop is literally 2 blocks from our school, so we can just walk out anytime, just as long as we know the times that the routes are running, hop on that, access a place in the community, and then come back. And our MCT also will come out to the schools as well and do that training with them then again. So we kind of are able to use both CILs and MCT.
The question today.
So I am a job coach and I work with adults, and I'm wondering about your best methods for initiating difficult conversations around gaining independence and taking risk of living independently while their parent is still around, to ensure that they can make that transition, and to sort of mitigate regression in the period of grief and loss.
Let's start.
I'll talk a little bit about this. So my former background when I put myself through college was through a Scylla home. So I have some experience with that. We've also had a couple of our students tragically lose parents in their final years of high school and watch some of those steps as well. So yeah, my group has anything to say, point me in the right direction. I think the biggest thing for us is that's part of our transition process is if we know people, certain individuals in our group are going to probably be best served down that path, then we start making some of those connections, letting them know every group home in your community is a little bit different. We have an excellent partner in our neighborhood who has a family support person, and I'm constantly saying, start here. She knows the most about family support in our area. that grieving process, our counselor will definitely make those connections for them. I think one of the testaments that we build these strong relationships with families is, in that case, the student's primary caregiver passed away unexpectedly, and the father just even recently, a couple months ago, reached out and he's like, I need help. So knowing that now it's been 2 or 3 years, that we still can call us up, call us, we'll make those connections, we'll still help you. But it's not one conversation, it will be part of a process, and learning that different homes kind of specialize in different areas. I know in the St. Louis area where I worked, there were homes for individuals with Prader-Willi or autism, or, so it's kind of like picking out a college, like you're going to go there and know, oh, wait, this is a best fit. This is a home for me. And most recently, a parent who didn't think they would ever go down that path went on a home visit and had this sudden moment of peace. And she's a former retired teacher. And she's like, I never thought I would do this. I knew I was never going to do this, but I know that it's the best place now. And they totally did a 180. And now their daughter's thriving in a home.
I would say it's important to meet them where they're at. So, it can be a very sensitive topic. We have families from every gamut of, okay, they're 18 now. How are you going to help me get them out of my house? To ones that we are not discussing it. They're always going to live with me. We're not going to go there. So you almost have to meet them where they're at. Make sure you're providing them with information. We keep on our website a big resource guide that's constantly a fluid document that's being updated. So at any time, anybody could click on the resource guide. It's not just our students and families, to see different resources out there. We partner with our social workers, right? So they probably can approach things a little bit more gently than, some of us other staff members might, or with a different lens, to start providing that information, kind of like what you said, right? Starting early, the more you start to put the little tidbits, the little thoughts into it, and meeting where they are and getting them to that end goal. And then we even have a transition facilitator that arranges and schedules a whole bunch of those tours and opportunities to go see places. And she puts it out there for families hey, just come check this out. Because the more you start to see something or see what's out there, it might increase your comfortability and your ability to talk about those long-term plans.
Insurance. Say.
Thank you. So just connecting with everything that's been shared already, and again, from this sort of more conceptual level, I would say zoom out. What's the barrier that the family perceives? Address that barrier versus kind of getting stuck at this point of, disagreement. I would say, who can be your messenger, right? And so, going back to building personal relationships, if you don't have that relationship with the family, no doubt they're not going to want to listen to what it is that you have planned for their student, right? So build the relationship, right? And if you don't have the relationship and you need the decision to happen now, right, bring someone else into the meeting who they trust more, So I talk about, IEP meetings and being strategic. If you're trying to get your message across, don't have a bunch of intimidating people in the meeting that the family doesn't know, Maybe have a few allies in the room, and let those allies talk. Try stuff, show them, right? Okay, so, we have evidence that your student has been successful at work, right? Oh, here's a big one. Ask the student. Right? I mean, what great evidence when the student turns to their family and says, I want to be independent, I want to partner, I want to live outside of the home, I want to work, right? And then just go from there.
The one thing that I would add is raise the expectations. I've had lots of families that have come in from the high school setting where in the IEP it had their student going to a job site with a one-on-one job coach. And then in a very short period of time, seeing that this individual does not need that support. So raising that expectation, and what's going to happen then is that student is going to demonstrate not only to school, but also to the families that they are capable of these things.
All right. Thank you, panel. You guys did a great job. Lots of great information. I appreciate all of you here listening and learning, and we thank you for coming.